producers have been battling for possible adjustments of U.S. tariffs on coconut products, among other Philippine exports. The U.S. is a top buyer of the Philippines' food and non-food coconut products in 2024, accounting for at least 25% of the total. The Philippines exported a total of $556.3 million worth of coconut products to the U.S. in 2024. Axeium Resources Corporation is a Philippine-listed integrated manufacturer and exporter of premium coconut products. And just looking at its technical chart, Axeium appears likely to continue moving sideways in a narrow range, says Ron Acoba of Trading Edge, consistent with its recent trading pattern over the past several weeks. Over in the short term, the stock has support at 2 pesos and resistance at 2.20 per share. With us now for more, Axeium Resources Chairman and CEO Romeo Chan. So good to see you. Romy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right, well, talk to us about the situation in the U.S. because a substantial portion of your revenues derived from U.S. customers. How are your buyers doing in the U.S. at the current baseline 10% tariffs?
Well, like everybody else in the world today, everyone is in turmoil, not certain what to expect from the tariffs that President Trump is imposing. So people are holding their orders, they're reviewing their inventory positions, and they're hoping that things will get better, especially with the recent development of the trade negotiations between the US and China. We hope that the tariffs will go back down much lower, maybe just to 10%.
So it's
right?
like it's in like a holding pattern there. I mean, we can't really tell which way to go. But what we do know is that there is a supply issue, and that's been there even before President Trump's tariffs.
That's correct. And I think that's even a bigger threat to our industry because coconut oil has gone up easily almost by 100% since the last quarter of 2024. In the end of 2024, coconut oil was at levels of $1,400 to $1,500 per metric ton. Yesterday, coconut oil hit an all-time high of $2,800 per metric ton. That's $2,800. And as you know, people will be scrambling to look for substitutes for coconut oil. However, fortunately for us, we're in the food industry, so it's not going to be easy to replace coconut in a Hershey Almond Joy or Mounds bar or even in a Mars Bounty bar.
True, because
So
the
we are
substitutes for coconut oil are the likes of palm oil, vegetable oil, among others, which you use for, say, beauty products, for instance.
Correct, yes. Palm is the easiest to substitute for coconut oil, palm and palm kernel, but they've also gone up tremendously. And the reasons being, obviously, one, in terms of the supply, we were hit by the El Nino. In 2023, El Nino ravaged most of Southeast Asia, and it hit the Philippines early in 2024. So in 2025, we've been suffering a shortage of coconuts. Okay? But on the other hand, the yield of our coconut trees has been very low, very poor compared to other countries like India, Indonesia. For instance, our coconut tree today can only average around 30 to 40 coconuts per year versus Indonesia, which can do more than 100 nuts per tree per year. Okay? And on the demand side, you are correct. Aside from food, the demand for cosmetic products, personal care, and even biodiesel have put pressure on the supply of coconut. Hence, the tremendous steep increase in prices of coconut oil.
Yeah, and that hasn't changed the buying pattern of the increase in coconut products in the global market at record highs right now, as against all other commodities like, say, rice and corn, for instance.
That's true. And we don't expect it to change. People have not really, especially here in the Philippines, people have not put emphasis on coconut products. But globally, the demand for coconuts is growing, and the future is very bright for coconut. And that's why Axeium is very, very upbeat and we were making heavier investments in order to take advantage of that growing demand.
So the heavier investments that you're making is for which market then? Because the US, you've got a substantial exposure there, but I know that there is also a great need in places like the European Union, South America, Middle East, and even the ASEAN.
Absolutely. We are traditionally, US has been around 50% of our market thrust, but in the last year or so, we have been shifting more emphasis to Europe, to Asia, and even Latin America. But we are also encountering issues there. For example, when you talk about this so-called trade advantage of ours in terms of the tariff, Philippines is imposed a 70% tariff versus Vietnam, which is something as high as 40 plus. Indonesia, 35%. However, that 17% advantage of ours may not last very long, because the day after Trump got on the phone with the Vietnamese president, they were already lobbying to lower the tariff for Vietnam. Even without the Trump tariff, today, not many people know Brazil, which is the biggest market in South America for our coconut products, has a 50% tariff on Philippine coconuts versus 0 for Sri Lanka. In Mexico, there is a 20% tariff on Philippine coconuts versus 0 from Vietnam. In other words, we have to move fast to negotiate with the US and along with these Latin American countries to negate the tariff imposed on us.
Okay, so we got to move fast on the trade front, but we also got to move faster in terms of providing what will be huge demand if we did get a trade advantage, which means replanting. So how is that coming along? Because there is indeed this supply issue.
You're striking a raw nerve there, Kathy, because you're correct. We have a three-pronged plan for our future as Axeium. Okay? One is to expand, of course, put up new equipment, new technology, to be able to come up with bigger and better products in terms of food safety. Number two, we asked ourselves the question, we have the plants, the manufacturing facilities, but where are the nuts? There is a program today by some quarters of government to say that they're going to plant 100 million coconut trees over the next 5 years. First question, where are you going to plant them? Where will you get 1 million hectares of land to plant 100 million coconut trees? Second question, who is going to do it? Who's going to plant all those 100 million trees? So we have, as Axeium, come up already through the auspices of Secretary Babe Singson to come out with a memorandum of understanding with the biggest coconut farmers federation, CONFED, which is led by Charlie Avila. We have come out with a memo of understanding among MPAV, which is a Manny Pangilinan-led company, Metro Pacific Agri Ventures, whose president is Joby Hernandez. We have signed that memo because Mr. Pangilinan believes in food security and is encouraging us to be active in this tree replanting. So with the president of MPAV, Mr. Joby Hernandez, Mr. Charlie Avila, the president of CONFED, and for Axeium, we've come out with a memo of understanding which says, number one, the farmers will help us plant the seeds and the trees, but we will make sure that they have a market where they can sell their products at a fair price.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to those replanting efforts and seeing them in your own plant over in Misamis Oriental. Thank you so much for providing us a lot of insight there. Romeo Chan of Axeium Resources Corporation, appreciate the time.